Hi, welcome back to the channel. This time I wanted to do a video on my RD Amplification DUALIST amp. They're a little bit of a hidden gem in the sense that they are handmade, made to order essentially. I think Rob might keep a few in stock, but if you've been watching the channel and the demos that we've been putting out, then you will have seen this amp basically in the background, affectionately known as Stonking Red or Big Red, anything like that. It's a really cool amp. For all intents and purposes, it's a single channel amp with two modes. To a layman like me, it's a two channel amp as far as I'm concerned, but it's not technically. So it's a cascaded gain preamp circuit with two modes. So you've got single and dual. Now, what I want to show you in the video is that there's a lot of headroom in this amp. And I'll talk about how I sort of feel about that at the end. But single channel is effectively your clean to break up channel. Dual can be anything because you've got the option with the cascading gain and the neat little gain trim on the back to actually control whether you want that as kind of a break up channel or to go full on sort of decent overdrive gain. So there's plenty of options there, really. I think there really is something for everyone. And I think let's just kick it off and start with some clean tones and see where we go from there. So some other things, you will be hearing that I have got some reverb on this. It's not on a pedal or anything like that. It's actually on the amp. I think it's an optional thing if you ever want a dualist. Now, some people might go, it's on the back, but in all seriousness, I don't use a lot. I set it to sort of between 1 and 2, not 2 o'clock, as in 1 and 2 on the dial, and stick with that, really. The fact that it's on the back actually for me is more handy, because it would just be a knob on the front that I don't ever move once I set it. So yeah, I don't mind that. The other feature on the back, as I mentioned before, is the gain trim. That's really cool. We'll talk about that in more detail very shortly. Also then on the back is the tube buffered effects loop, so you can run as many pedals as you want in through the effects loop, whether you're using the 4-cable method or just be lazy like I am sometimes, just absolutely smash the front end of the amp. The controls in a way are simple, which is one of the things that really sort of drew me to it, because I'm a little bit of a simpleton. I don't like having to pre-program stuff, things like that. So the fact that on the front of the amp you've got gain 1, which is the single stage gain setting, treble, bass, middle, your basic EQ, gain 2 for the second stage, the volume level for the second stage, a filter for the second stage, which we'll talk about very shortly, and a master volume for the amp. And I thought that was it, but then you've got these push-pull knobs as well. You've got a bright setting, a fat setting, and just a straight up boost. So the bright setting, I mean, you'll hear it in a second, but it's just it just brightens up your sound. Really, really jangly. The fat setting is if you want to sort of fatten up your single coils, make it more like a P90-ish kind of sound, maybe even bordering on the H word, but yeah, that's very cool. And the boost is just a straight up boost. So if I do a quick loop for you, and we'll just mess around with a bit of the EQ and those push-pull settings. flipping it onto dual stage, and we're coming over to this sort of section here now. So we can set the gain on the second stage, the volume, and use the filter knob, which is going to control dialing off some frequencies in a certain direction. So again, we'll set up a loop shortly and talk about that. Now the other cool thing about the dual stage is, with it being cascading, if you want a little less gain on stage 2, you could just roll back gain 1, or alternatively you can use the gain trim control on the back, and that is going to stop, or rather it's going to determine how much gain bleeds through from, or cascades through from, the single stage. Now you can really dial this in nicely and get just sort of that classic rock sound, or you can go full on nuts and just wind it all the way up so there's everything coming through, and we'll get pretty close to that with some of the heavier stuff that I'll use my Pioneer for. So for now, let's just hear a few sort of overdriven sounds on the Strat. So then, heard it on my Strat there. I mean, it's really, I don't know if the mics are going to do this justice, but it is one of the sweetest overdrives I've ever heard. And I mean, there's so much gain on there. Once you learn to use the controls and the gain trim, I just don't need any more. So with that in mind, let's see if we can put something a bit heavier through it. I'll put one of my Pioneers through there, which it's tuned to drop C. So let's just see how it can handle that if it chugs. As promised then, let's take a look now at this filter knob. So again, I've set up a small loop with the Pioneer playing something a little bit heavier, and we'll just roll it from 0 all the way up and back, and you can hear the difference this makes sort of fine tuning in your EQ. So with all that in mind, what I initially thought was a very simple amp when I got it to me, with no disrespect to Rob, you know, it looks simple enough. Once you start getting to know it, you realise it's anything but simple in that sense. There's a lot there. There's a lot more than I thought there was. But in the same sense, it is kind of simple to use and dial it in. You know, I mean, I've got my settings that I prefer on there. I just am amazed at how clean the cleans are. It really did remind me, I just used the dreaded comparison here, but I had a twin a few years ago that I sold because it was heavier than a piece of moon rock. But you know, that we're in that territory of clean. It's just such a chimey clean that it just blows me away. And then to think, oh, okay, well, surely it can't do, you know, good. That was where my twin let itself down. I had the model that did have the overdrive, and it just was a bit trebly and a bit nasty. This, on the other hand, is just super sweet. I think it was Rob saying it's something to do with that the overdrive is built upon the mids, something around that, and the way he's voiced it. But it drives so sweetly. Everything from the P90 through to the quite high output humbuckers in there. I've yet to get a bad sound out of this to my ear anyway. And yeah, I've gigged with this thing. It's only 15 watts. So mine is a single-ended Class A 15 watt amp. And you know, when we were speaking to Rob about it, I didn't need any more. My AD30, my orange, it's just too much at the minute anyway, and I wanted something a lot more usable that you could really crank and start moving some air with the speakers. And I think we achieved that, and the KT120 in there really does give it a bit of clean headroom. Another really cool thing about the RD amps that Rob put in the design of them is they are cathode biased. Now again, to the layman's like me, that means you can switch out the valves, the power valves at the back, to a different valve, and he very kindly, it's labelled on there what alternatives you can use. So you can actually change your power settings and to a degree sort of the voicing with the different tube, and that's really cool. It means you can take this down to sort of a 5 watt or up to sort of a 25 watt. And with it being cathode biased, it means that you're not going to kill yourself trying to rebias valves or ship it off to your mate who says he knows what he's doing but doesn't really. So it will literally bias itself. I think that's very, very cool, very handy in this day and age when you can't get out and see anyone to rebias your amp anyway. So I know that he does amps in other configurations. I know he does Class AB. He'll use different valves, different power settings. I think he said anything is doable from around 5 watts up to about 100. So it can come in any configuration, or you can have any colour, any grill, all that shebang. It's completely custom. That's another great thing about it. And I got to say, I like it so much. And it's one of these things where the longer I've owned it, the more I've fallen in love with it. And I mean, I loved it to start with. It really is the crown jewel of my amp collection now. I can't praise it enough. And it's got to the point where we're actually sorting out another amp with Rob, because I've just been so impressed with this. And there's another one I want to try, and he said, yeah, I'll give it a go and build it, and we'll see what happens. So watch this space. But for now, I definitely recommend checking out RD Amplification. If you've got anything that you think custom wise, you know, colors, power, the valves you want to use, just drop him a message, because it's all doable. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful, and see you soon.